number 99. Glad to have you joining us here. If you're listening to the recording, I can lay out some quick details here because you're probably curious where the show is. Well, today is the last live stream of the weekly live streams. That's right, folks. Today is the final one, 99. So if you're looking for the podcast, we have, by this point, transitioned into a pre-recorded YouTube channel, brand new YouTube channel. You can find the link in the description. It's not there right now as recording this live, but it will be when you listen back to it. So that's where you'll find us. Also, be sure to join the community on the Telegram link, also in the description. So, if you're wondering where we're at, that's where you can find us. And to get into the rest of the show here today, we got, it's a chill show, guys. This is kind of like a victory lap show. It's not a real serious show here. We got a few topics to talk about, some COVID stuff, climate change, interesting things are going on, but hardly. It's a very slow news day. It's a very slow news cycle period. I don't know if you guys noticed that or not, but there's really not much going on in America anyway. There's a lot of stuff going on internationally. We might touch on some of that stuff, but feel free to chime in at any point here with questions, suggestions for comments, things like that, because likely will be a show on the shorter side of things here today. We're going to be talking about flu-rona. Flu-rona. What does flu-rona mean? What is it? They're finding it in California now. Is it fake news? Is it real? Is it an actual problem? We'll talk about it. We'll be talking about CNN finally waking up to the fact, months and months later, years later, that being fat is actually bad for COVID outcomes. And this is part of the kind of the narrative shift we talked about last week. Man, if you guys thought I was kidding about that narrative shift, these stories today will seal the deal. You will be convinced. We have yet to figure out exactly why the narrative is shifting or where it's going to. That's still an open-ended question. But we got another story here that came out shortly after, I think the same day that we streamed last week. This came out right after. I wish I saw this so we could talk about it on the stream, but Fauci's actually admitting that the hospitals are overcounting cases. That's right, overcounting cases. And I mean, if that is not a 180-degree shift from where we were going previously with the narrative, I mean, I don't know what is. We're going to be talking about how more hysteria surrounding this. Last week we talked about how hospitals are getting full due to asymptomatic COVID patients coming in just because they're afraid. They want to come in and get testing, further testing and treatment while they have no symptoms at all. But they're so pumped full of the media fear that they feel compelled to go to the hospital to get treatment even though they're asymptomatic. This is a continuation of that narrative here. We've got NYPD struggling with people calling 911 for COVID tests and hospital transportation. So the NYPD and the fire department actually had to come out and say that we're not going to be, our hospitals, our ambulances, and our fire trucks do not actually offer COVID testing, and we're not going to give you transport to the hospital for COVID. So that's going to be fun. We're really starting to see now the effects of long-term hysteria, and these are the symptoms that we're witnessing. And last but not least on the docket today is the climate change topic. We have, this one's pretty huge actually, in terms of America and the health of the country overall. This is a post from somebody on the New York Times about how she was convinced to choose not to breed based on the fact that we're having climate change. We're going through climate change. Now, this isn't a new narrative, but the fact that it's on the New York Times, it's getting this much press, it's getting spread around. This idea is becoming very mainstream. And maybe you know some people like this in real life. I know a couple. So let's get into it, guys. Run the intro. Grab a drink, get comfortable. It's the last live stream of the weekly narrative. Let's go. 99 shows later, over a year ago, I set out to see if I could run a podcast. And the goal initially was running 2 live episodes a week. that were about an hour long. And at first it was kind of, it was it felt like an obligation, which was expected. But over time, I kind of got into the groove of things. I got into the habit of consuming media, which isn't necessarily a good thing. I consumed a lot of media for you guys. I didn't want to consume all this media, just to be clear. Okay, I'm all over Twitter. I'm consuming leftist media from CNN, everywhere else. It's pretty rough. The common average human brain would probably be completely mangled to pieces by now, going through what I did for you guys just to get content for this show over the last year and a half. But here we are, and I got to say, I did enjoy it. Learned a lot. I definitely increased my public speaking abilities, the podcasting abilities. As far as the quality of the podcast goes, I'd have to say it's not that bad. There's very little dead air here. We have decent topics when there is news. When the news is better, the news really determines the quality of the show, because when the topics are good, the show is good. So just wanted to say thank you guys for being around for 99 live streams, hanging in there with us, despite the fact that my channel is completely shadow banned. We have no growth at all over the last year and a half. But we learned a lot, and I think we had a lot of fun doing it too. We got the Russian bots in chat already. What's up, Dari, Regent Zen, Paul, Osis, Ben in chat, multiple Pauls in chat. We got some stereos coming in. Like I said, guys, today's kind of like a freestyle, chill out, victory lap type of show. It's not going to be very intensive on the content. It's a dead news season anyway, so feel free to chime in any kind of comments, questions, topics you might be interested in hearing about from me. We got some stereos that came in already. We'll jump over those right now. Paul?
Hey, look, there's a Brandon in here. Hello, Brandon. Let's go, Brandon. I didn't catch the first minute. In case you don't talk about him, who should be the MVP of the NFL, and I've sort of stopped watching it, is Aaron Rodgers, Green Bay Packers quarterback. He has not taken the jab, and he is an absolute king. He's actually out here articulating the need for early treatment and giving a good case for it. I couldn't be happier that the league's best player is taking a stand on this. That's a gigantic white pill in my book.
White pill indeed, and really, if you think about it, those are the guys that we need standing up against this. I think there was it Kyrie Irving, some other basketball player. He's really good. I don't follow basketball at all, but I know he was also refusing the jab, and those are the guys that we need doing it, because they're the ones who are going to make the leagues actually snap and concede to the treatment side of you, not just the vaccination side of you. And hopefully, he gets his way and is able to play, get an exception or whatever it is, and set an example for everybody else. Because when the people who have all the power don't act, that's the most discouraging thing. Kind of like black conservatives these days. When black conservatives don't speak out against the racism narratives, they have so much power, like, Aaron Rodgers does, because he's so good. He's untouchable, right? The black conservatives are another example of that. They're untouchable. What are you going to say about them aside from you're going to call them coon? Who cares? Whatever. The point is, there's certain populations for each particular problem and issue in America that have a lot more power than others, and we need them to stand up. Not just about the racism, the BLM, the vaccinations, but all around. Let's see. We got Osis in the chat.
Well, two things. I have a crazy hair girl that I know that
purple hair
is getting divorced. I've known her for over 10 years. She's talking about how she's glad she can't procreate. Apparently she had cancer of some kind and had her uterus ripped out. And she totally looks like she's totally lost her mind. She got the short side shave, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so there's that. I definitely know one of those. And you can't let this be the last live stream when you're on 99. You got to make it an even 100. That's just unacceptable to me. I'll help you host if I have to. I don't care. Or tell Delaney to get off her ass.
See, that was the thing. I like putting it at 99 because it does have that factor, that OCD factor. Why not just go to 100? But honestly, I was going to go to 100, but I found out that I have a new league starting next week. I have real life activities that I have to do starting next week on Wednesday. Maybe we could do a weekend stream or something like that. Now, here's the thing. This isn't the last live stream ever. This is just the last live stream of the weekly scheduled live streams. We've been on a schedule hard. I've been here every day except for maybe 2 or 3 where we sick. That's coming to an end. But as far as live streams, occasional, those aren't going anywhere. So we'll have a 100, and I think those are actually going to be moving to locals, because locals has live streaming now, which is pretty awesome. Because that's kind of our own private community. You know, we can have forums, share stuff, kick out all the white supremacists, because I don't want any of those guys in there, and have a lot of fun. So don't worry, we're going to have 100. It's just not going to be scheduled as normal. All right, yeah, make sure you guys stay on top of those Russian bots in the chat here. Dari in the chat says, Fauci is a perfect distraction for Cuomo. The ex-governor is getting free pass, for his COVID debacle and the senior citizens. There was a lot of distraction plays going on out there, and I'm afraid that the concessions that we're seeing right now from them on all these COVID topics is also a distraction. Somehow, I haven't figured it out yet. I haven't come to any conclusions, but I think I'm on the lookout for something that we're being distracted by, because this is too much. It's too much too fast. The concessions that we're overcounting cases, the concessions that weight loss actually helps with COVID, the concessions we talked about last week. There were multiple of them, of the narrative shifts that happened immediately. So I'm just not sure exactly where this is headed yet. Let's jump into, speaking of where we're headed, let's go over to California right now for the first case of flu-rona, whatever that is, flu-rona. Now, the question I have immediately before even reading this article is, are they just trying to create new words for novelty's sake? Kind of like how, I told you guys that they bust out a new variant every time we need another hit of novelty, because our attention span is so short collectively as a society that we have to have new words, fancy new things, new stimuli coming in for us to even care about things. Is this the evolution of that trend, or is this something different? Flu-rona. Flu and coronavirus together. First known case detected in Southern California. There's really not much to this article, but there's a video here of a guy describing about how, we see COVID cases, Omicron anyway, is largely just a runny nose and kind of that's about it. Runny nose is the top symptom. And then they say, if you also experience body aches, well then, that's a sign that you may also have the flu at the same time. So basically, Omicron plus the flu is less dangerous and less symptomatic in terms of severity than the original OG COVID strains. So what do you get when you combine a 99.9% survival rate disease with another 99.9 survival rate disease? I think you still get 99.9%. Anyway, that's interesting. Is this going to... honestly, the way things are headed right now, all the experts are indicating that, Omicron, not all the experts, but a lot of the experts, a lot of credible people are indicating that Omicron is just kind of blow through in about 2 weeks, and then it'll be done and gone. And then by that time, Omicron will have given the immunity to everybody to the point to where we probably won't care about this thing anymore. So this is headed into the ground. The COVID thing is decelerating at a rapid pace, not only in reality, but also in the narratives that we're being told. So keep an eye out. Stay vigilant for whatever's coming next, I guess, is the idea here. Man, the things are getting interesting when CNN admits, of all people, 2 years late, well, a year and a half, we'll be generous here. A year and a half later, after we realized that being fat is probably the number one risk factor for COVID adverse outcomes, CNN finally asks the question, can weight loss help protect against COVID-19? And they're just asking the question. They're not even saying it. So we're inching closer. You guys will you'll note that even early on in the pandemic, we were calling for things, I and Delaney were calling for things like public health notifications, public health service announcements, saying things like, you should lose weight, not only just focusing on wearing a mask, not only just focusing on getting the vaccine when that came out, but even before the vaccine was available, nobody was saying, go outside, get exercise, get vitamin D, nothing like that. It was completely ignored. And for some reason now, it's not as if there's new information coming out, but I think I know what's going on. I'll be generous, and after we read a little bit, I'll explain what I think is going on. and explain why we're not in a good spot here. So in a holiday season, when the average American can easily pack on a few pounds, experts say there's another reason to pay attention to your weight. COVID-19. People who are overweight or obese are at much higher risk of more severe disease and even death from COVID-19. And one new study suggests that losing weight can reduce that risk. Oh, man. There it is. The hammer has been dropped. People who are overweight or obese are at much higher risk of more severe disease, even death from COVID-19. Now, this is what's interesting. The head of the CDC came out. Was it the head of the CDC? I believe it was the head of the CDC or somebody at the WHO came out and admitted this last week. So now that they've come out and said it, CNN feels safe to come out and say this. Yeah, 22 months late, exactly. That was this. They're trying to hype a new variant in France, huh? Okay. All right. Well, there's been a few variants that kind of sizzled out, like Mu, for example. I don't know. We'll see what they do. But they continue to say the obesity epidemic has been a threat to Americans' health for years. Oh, yeah. Well, you think it's killed more than COVID has. So why don't we treat it with the same, severity? It's the second leading cause of preventable death after smoking. With COVID-19, it becomes even more dangerous. One study found 30% of COVID-19 hospitalizations were in people with obesity. Wow. CNN is dropping some red pills here. 22 months late, but they're dropping some red pills. The obesity clinic where Dr. Fatima Cody Stanford works in Boston has a 1,000-plus person waitlist that grew a lot longer with the pandemic, even with more than a dozen specialists on staff. It's not enough to meet the demand. So, yeah, people are finally waking up to this. Now, remember, during the pandemic, in the middle of the pandemic, and I'm never going to stop bringing this up because this is one of the clearest signs of dystopia that we were all able to witness live as it happened. Well, the Cosmo magazine cover showed, a 300-pound, maybe not 300-pound, but obese, very obese woman or a series of women in yoga pants doing yoga poses with big bold letters that said, "This is healthy." Yeah, that's right. So I'm curious what Cosmo has to say about this, and I'm curious what the SJW kind of woke mutant reaction to this is, because believe it or not, if you're on Twitter and you're seeing reactions to narratives like this, people are actually arguing against losing weight. It's hilarious to watch, because I'll find a reply from somebody on Twitter who says, well, actually, losing weight is not healthy in all cases. Click on her profile. Of course, it's a cartoon picture because mutants are always ashamed of their personal, physical bodies. But you scroll through the media and then you find a selfie that they took of themselves or something. Always obese. Always, 100% of the time. They're really just making excuses for themselves and kind of projecting that onto society. We need to recognize collectively that's really what's going on. These fat people just don't want to take any responsibility for themselves and such. They would rather try and change reality or try to sweep under the rug something as severe as a pandemic, which only ever existed because of fat people. Keep in mind, if there were no obese people to the level that we have in America, none of this would have ever happened. There would have been no, minor levels of hospitalizations, minor levels of death. It would have barely even hit our radar. But we have to thank all the fatties for this, for the last 2 years. It's really all their fault. You can't blame the leftists for taking the opportunity to capitalize on the opportunity of the fat people falling like flies to COVID. I mean, they're just operating based off incentives. You don't have to have any kind of malice or evil intent to explain what they did. The problem is the fact that we had the conditions in existence for this to happen in the first place, which was the unhealthy state of the American population in general. The leftists are fatties. Yes, they are, Osis. Yeah, they are. So they attempt to hide while attempting to normalize. That's exactly it. And I told you guys I would tell you what's going on with this. And in a way, it's good, but in a way, it's mostly bad. It's a net negative. So in the second paragraph of the article, you notice people who are overweight or obese are at much higher risk of much more severe disease and death from COVID-19. And one new study suggests that losing weight can reduce that risk. So do you see what's happening here? Because it's clear as day. clear as day to me. They are not capable of independent thought anymore. And what I mean by that is people, half the country at least, probably more than that, cannot exist in reality and intake new information and correlate it in their brain to create a new opinion or a new thought, or even just survive, really, because we're in a state now where people are literally waiting for somebody to tell them that a study showed results to confirm what they're seeing with their own eyes in real life every single day. Because I think the biggest difference between people that we can see in how we've reacted to COVID has been, to summarize and kind of, again, take a victory lap around this whole thing, because it's, I've largely been accurate with my narratives and predictions throughout this whole entire thing. And I have never had, I haven't worn a mask in like 8 months, and I have not gotten sick. I'm in Texas. Nobody wears masks. There's a lot of fat people here too. Okay, so there's a lot of plumes, a lot of COVID spreading around. So whatever I'm doing appears to be working. That's kind of the point that I'm making. But back to the reality thing, I can walk around and see and notice that there does not appear to be a pandemic occurring. I'm not seeing freeways being empty of cars. I'm not seeing businesses shutting down due to people dying from COVID. I'm not hearing stories from friends, family members, second, third degrees of separation even, which is exponentially large, about how family members, friends are dying to COVID, or any kind of horror stories. I'm hearing a lot of things online, but that's not real life. Half the country thinks online is real life, whereas they go into reality, their day-to-day lives, nothing actually changed. Now, those of us who can still correlate reality and integrate those new findings and details and facts into our brains, we don't have to wait for studies to come out to confirm what we're seeing. Now, are we 100% positive? No. These are trends. These are things that we sense with our sensory organs. That's what senses are for. Now, it seems like half the population has outsourced. They have a proxy for their senses now. They're being told what to think, what the opinions are, what reality really is, despite the fact that they are seeing it with their own eyes. They're not actually integrating that information. So this is good in the fact that we're looking for studies to give us information, but it's bad that we're completely ignoring what we're seeing with our own eyes. And guys like Scott Adams is a perfect example of this. He never leaves his house, and he, he doesn't shill vaccinations, but he does try to go over the rationale for why you wouldn't get vaccinated a lot. And he never leaves his house, so he doesn't know that for people who don't have comorbidities, there is no pandemic. There is no reason to get treated. That's the thing. The correct decision to have made from the start, if you have no comorbidities, like me, was to take no action, meaning no vaccinations. I don't change anything about my life because I have no comorbidities. There's unknown risk on both ends. There's unknown risk of getting COVID, unknown risk of getting vaccinated. So that means I take no action. And so far, that's played out. It's worked out well for me. Let's see. A good taxo is worth its weight in gold. Taco, yes. Taco truck immunity. That's Plato's allegory of the cave. They see what they are shown. It is not reality. Yeah, exactly. It's the cave. We are witnessing the cave in real life. Fried foods will protect you with the grease in Texas. Maybe. That's a good theory. Could be. I'll go ahead and test that out. I'll keep eating some greasy foods, and if I don't get COVID, then we'll know it's real. So there's my little mini rant on where we're at with COVID. And, some people, even though they're incorrect on certain opinions, like taking the vaccination, they refuse to acknowledge that simple observation of reality will get you 80 to 90% of the way there. So, that saying that was going around about how you will own nothing and you'll be happy? Well, it's the same thing with your own actual thoughts. Don't outsource your thoughts to someone else to wait for CNN to say, well, a new study suggests that losing weight can reduce risk. No, these people have already outsourced their opinions and their minds, actually, really, if you think about it, to other outlets. So a little scary overall. Not good, but you know what? I don't plan on spending an awful lot of investment into this old society anyway, so I'm not too concerned about it. Let's go to the next story of the day here. Fauci, another COVID story. Fauci downplays child COVID hospitalizations hitting record high. So why would the child hospitalizations be hitting a record high in the stats? Again, the data, which is not verifiable. Why aren't they just taking advantage of that and running with it? We will ask the question after this stereo.
That is brilliant branding, Jeremy. I'm going to steal that. I do not outsource my thinking. That is fucking kudos, man. That's great.
Thank you.
That's memeable, that's shareable, and I think that'll really get the noggin jogging for some people.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear as day to me. It's really, you see these people standing around waiting for someone to tell them what to think. It's we're outsourcing everything else, so why not? Physical goods, 2022. Guys, it's 2022. We're not limited by the physical realm anymore. We got NFTs, we got the metaverse. You can outsource the production of physical goods. In 2022, you can outsource your thought. I hope that's not a legit prediction that comes true. Continuing on from our story here. From Newsweek, Anthony Fauci downplays child COVID hospitalizations hitting record high. This one came out. This is the one that I was talking about that came out right after the last stream. The question is really why? What's going on here? From the article, Dr. Anthony Fauci has downplayed concerns about a rise in the number of children in hospital with COVID as the Omicron variant continues its rapid spread. Speaking to MSNBC's Ayman Mohyeldin, who was filling in for Rachel Maddow on Wednesday night, Fauci suggested that some of the children currently being treated at medical facilities were hospitalized with COVID as opposed to because of COVID. He added that some children who are currently listed as being in the hospital with COVID may actually receive a treatment for a broken leg or appendicitis rather than for a severe reaction to the virus. Who was saying this months and months before Fauci came out and said it? Well, a lot of people, but also, namely, your boy, this guy right here. Fauci, the White House chief medical advisor, also said that while risk of children getting hospitalized with COVID is far lower for adults and elderly people, the number would be expected to increase alongside the record-breaking number of new cases recorded in the U.S. and the rest of the world due to the spread of Omicron. So, why? What is happening? Are we in the landing zone area of this? Has the landing gear come down? Are we on the approach officially? I mean, in reality, we are, yes. But I'm curious if the actual administration is actually officially putting the landing gear down for this thing, because I don't understand. Does anybody have any ideas why they would actually be admitting this at this point? And here's the question that I have too. What kind of revisions are we going to see going forward about the data? Because again, just like this stuff, just like the fact that these cases are overcounted because of with COVID instead of for COVID, is this going to be retroactively kind of going back and applying to the death counts as well? Or is that too much? Is that too much? Is that going to break too many skulls for us to actually go back and admit that not only were these stats, the hospitalizations, kind of fibbed, but also the death counts were? I mean, we all know they were. We talked about stories about how several counties, health systems just revised them instantly overnight and dropped their death counts by 20-25%. But the total number, that 700,000 or 800,000 or whatever it is that we're up to at this point, that never went backwards. It needs to go backwards. There has to be some revisions made to that. And I'm curious if we will actually ever get to that point. If we're getting here, which is something I never expected to see, could we also get revisions on the death count? We're inundated with knowledge related to good eating habits, exercises, etc. I don't know. I'm not sure we are, Dari. Inundated with knowledge related to good eating habits, exercise. I think you actually have to dig. I think that if you were to... So my stance on health is this, and this is the same principle that I've applied through the pandemic, which is why I've got things like black seed oil. I've got ivermectin on hand, ready to go. I've been getting sunlight regularly outside, is because to break even on your health, your personal health and well-being, to break even in modern Western society today, you have to take active measures. If you're just simply sitting around consuming what's being provided to you and not taking any active measures on a daily basis to counteract just the effects of existing in America, literally just existing in America is so detrimental to your health that you have to take conscious counteractive actions to balance that out. And this is why we have 80% obesity rate or 80% overweight population, because most people will not take active measures to correct the deficit that they're naturally in on a day-to-day basis. Okay. Now there's a even smaller population, the 5%ers, who will go above and beyond that. They go to the gym, they get jacked, they work out, they eat 1 gram protein per pound of body weight every day. Those are the 5%ers. To get outside of that 80% of just degenerate, stagnant, deficit health status, you have to take active measures. And that means doing research on your own, digging, not just using what's being provided to you from an informational standpoint. And because I would disagree that we are not inundated with knowledge related to good eating habits. We're really not. I mean, has the food pyramid even been updated? I don't think it has. And we all know that was a scam too. So even if you were consuming the data that was being given to you, it's completely inaccurate. So you have to be actively going out and trying to figure out what's going on. And I think that's really, that should be your philosophy in everything in life. You have to be actively engaged if you want to get any value out of it. And we'll be talking about that and actually a lot more in the new YouTube channel, because we're going to be going into the philosophy a lot more and the concept of intentional living, and those who are engaged in life and those who are unengaged or disengaged from life. That's a big theme in the alt-centrist philosophy. Let's go to Osis and Stereo.
I think if they revise the numbers, it will be only after like January 2022. They'll be like, oh yeah, Omicron wasn't that serious, and we were just overcounting because there were all these people with the Omicron variant. But everyone prior to that during Donald Trump's presidency, that was all legitimate. Those numbers are all straight up and real. Trust us, we're with the government.
Yeah, they could be kind of sandbagging it, waiting to drop it at the right time, right? Because one of the interesting things is the intersection of the Trump-Biden administration with the vaccines. Now think about if Trump was the one who remained in the presidency while the vaccines were getting rolled out. The vaccine narrative would be completely flipped 180 degrees. There would be a different population pushing it and a different population resisting it. We saw the chief mutant over at MSNBC, Joy Reid, say explicitly, we can never trust the CDC under Trump. The same exact thing that people are saying about the CDC under Biden right now. But the flipping of that is a fun thing to think about, and I'm curious what also is in the back pocket that's going to be flipped after this particular administration or after a particular point in time, kind of like you're saying. So yeah, I agree with you. What's up, Corey? Yeah, the set is pretty tight, dude. It's pretty good. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. Courtney.
They are never going to admit any of this. They are in too far
They
too
kind of
deep. They have already done what they have to do, especially the people who are really buying into it. They will double, triple, quadruple down until the cows come home. And they're too far gone.
Well, that's what I thought too, Courtney. But look at, we're reading this article right here. Fauci admits on MSNBC that they're overcounting people, children with COVID. He admits that they were counting people that were in with a broken leg or appendicitis who just happened to test positive, and they're not actually in the hospital for COVID. So this is a revelation that I never expected to have happen. So is it a bit of a white pill? A little bit, I think so, yeah. Caitlin with the Starbelly Sneeches reference. You guys know about Starbelly Sneeches, right? I have a vague understanding of the Starbelly Sneeches, but I think it's relating to different group orientations. I heard Brett Weinstein talk about the Starbelly Sneeches before. Maybe Caitlin can elaborate for us. Let's go to Paul.
Active measures. To quote Norm MacDonald, no offense, but sounds like some commie gobbledygook.
Was that what he was responding to? Was active measures? That's funny. That interview with Norm was pretty good. Osis in the chat says, we all know that more people have supposedly died under Biden than Trump anyway, and that's with the vaccine. Yeah. So keep in mind, one of the things I've been saying from the start is that Biden is kind of like a disposable president. I think it's very likely that we could see when he's out or done and gone, or when they would need to rebrand the Democratic Party, they're just going to throw him under the bus. And then that's when things like the fact that he had more deaths, that's going to start to come out, and we'll start to see the page kind of turn. That's just a general prediction I'll throw out there. He was supposed to be disposable the entire time, guys. You know, he's not a real president. Courtney's got a follow-up.
What a hoax that food pyramid was, huh?
Indeed.
They had everybody. You had Cuomo from New York saying, no, I wouldn't trust it. You had Kamala Harris saying, no, don't trust this vaccine.
Yep.
So what changed?
Right. See, that's what I'm saying. And depending on how the political climate changes, which I'm getting less and less invested and interested in by the day, we may see these kind of revelations happen depending on what happens with the new administrations, election outcomes, things like that. So could get interesting. But as far as things are, I think one of the things that I've noticed with actually being involved with politics and the political cycles and presidential terms is that each term is its own little bubble, and that when that bubble is over, the narrative could go really any direction at all. It doesn't necessarily have to be a continuation. I mean, I think look at the Obama administration. A lot of people, while we were in that, thought that he was a great guy, but afterwards, a lot of stuff has come out that, you know, he's not really looked at in the same light as he was before by the people on the left. Same thing with Bush. Conservatives loved Bush when he was in, and now everyone likes to take dumps all over Bush. Even people on the right, they hated him, right? So, you know, this retroactively looking back at it, this could be a whole different view in 4 years when we look back on this. All right, let's go to the next story of the day. This one's great. This is really good. I'm surprised. This is kind of similar to what we were talking about last week. The hospitals are filling up with asymptomatic patients because they're just terrified due to the media propaganda that they have COVID, but they're asymptomatic. This is from the New York Police Department. The fire department had to come out and issue a public press release to get people to stop calling them for COVID tests and to be transported to the emergency room for COVID. Because people are so afraid now. People are so afraid. From the Sacramento Bee, need a COVID test, don't call 911 or go to the emergency room. Officials urge as cases surge. As coronavirus cases surge nationwide, officials across the country urge not to call 911 or go to the emergency room for a COVID-19 test. Do so only for true emergencies, such as when feeling very sick, severely sick. Quote, ambulances do not provide testing for COVID-19, and patients are not transported to a hospital to be tested upon request. The New York City Fire Department wrote on December 29th on Twitter, addressing the New Yorkers in a message also shared in Spanish and Chinese. Quote, transportation decisions are made based on medical needs. Please only call 911 during a real emergency. For those who aren't severely ill, an emergency call should be avoided to allow first responders to help people most in need. So you're lying in the gutter with a stab wound because you just wanted to go to the bodega and get a sub sandwich, but we all know that's a risky endeavor in and of itself in New York City. And you call 911, no ambulances are coming. Why? Because they're too busy responding to fatties who are consuming MSNBC and CNN at a chronic level, calling a 911 because they got a positive test with no symptoms. Yeah. So police department's too busy dealing with people who are literally just breaking down out of fear. to deal with real emergencies, and we already know they're probably short-staffed as it is. So compounding issues occurring over in New York right now with emergency services. That's just great. Now, this is something, again, we talk about this all the time. Inability to delay gratification. It feels really good for us to come out and pump the fear, to say that COVID is really dangerous, death surge, chyrons on the news, things like that. We don't ever stop to think about the second order effects of that. Second order effects means not necessarily what's going to happen just as a result of me saying that, but what's going to happen down the road. Butterfly effect type stuff, right? Things that I'm not thinking about right now. Obviously, we forewent all of those thoughts, and now, of course, we've got things like this happening. Who would have seen it coming? Let's go to Osis and Stereo.
I used to be a pretty staunch Bush defender, but finding out how he and his family tried to sabotage Trump's presidency, funding the Steele dossier and initiating the entirety of the Russiagate narrative, and then handing it off gleefully to Hillary Clinton and John McCain and Lindsey Graham going to the FBI with it. I'm totally disillusioned with the entirety of our national federal government. They're all crooks, and they could all go to hell.
See, that's what I'm saying, man. After every administration, there's the view changes retroactively. So I can't wait to see what we're gonna learn and what the narrative's gonna be on the Biden administration after he's out. Let's go to Courtney.
Can you imagine being that scared where you know that you're healthy, you know that you feel fine, you don't have any symptoms, and you call an ambulance? What? You go to the hospital just because you got two lines on your test?
Yeah. No, that is the power of the media, really, right there. The power of social reinforcement, the power of circles, the power of outsourcing your thought, really. Because, again, if you were to stop and objectively think about it, I mean, there's been a couple times when I've had, some, like a little raspy throat or something like that. And I thought, wait a second, is this COVID? All right, I gotta assess my actions, my possible paths of action right now based on reality. These people don't go through that thought process. They get it, and they already know what to think. It's pre-programmed. Okay, there's already a set program that'll run. If you get COVID, do this, experience this, feel this, react in this certain way. They don't, again, see reality, interact with it, integrate the new information, and then get on with their lives. It's almost as if, I mean, I'm not a conspiracy theory guy. You guys know that I think everything can be explained with human nature and incentives. It doesn't have to be any kind of shadowy cabals behind anything, but it could be interpreted as them testing out like a mass system of control, mind control, one might say. It's the last live stream on this channel. Who cares? We'll get to a little red flag from YouTube. It's okay. Dari says, you take your life in your own hands if you're a MAGA supporter and visit a Subway at 2 a.m. in the freezing cold weather. Exactly. Unintended consequences. Yeah. So the lack of people understanding unintended consequences, I think, can be tracked directly back to childhood, to be honest. I talk a lot about how the solutions to all the problems we're seeing are not really solvable because everything's kind of set in stone in a deterministic fashion based on individuals' childhoods. That's one thing that you'll never learn in real life is how to understand and plan for unintended consequences. So, I don't know who Jeremy perturbed, but I'm betting it was one of the blue pill guys he invited on. Oh yeah, I know. We're getting bombarded with Russian bots. But it could be a psyop because they're obviously Russian. They have Cyrillic names. So maybe it's really a democratic operation, internal. Who knows? Okay. The last story on the docket here. This is the best one. This one's really good. And I know a lot of people that feel this way. And I think this really needs to be talked about quite a bit. And this is from the Denver Post. To breed or not to breed? Yikes. What a question. Anxiety over future setting in for some would-be parents. So you guys know what we're talking about. This is a fairly common theme in today's day and age. Climate change is happening. Therefore, I'm not going to have kids. There's been something I've been thinking about quite a bit lately because I'm trying to figure out where this started. Where did this come from? How long has this really been floating around out there in the culture sphere? Because targeting someone's will to breed, that's about as, again, if you wanted to assign intent and not just describe everything with incentives, that's a pretty evil thing. And you guys know I don't really like using that word evil. In a world of pandemic chaos, political strife, and climate catastrophe, some see the future as too dark to procreate. Now, first of all, this article is this whole narrative of like, oh, climate change is coming and political strife and shortages, whatever. I don't want to breed because of all that stuff. I think this is hilarious. And if anybody is of this opinion, you need a reality check. You need a perspective check, because there has been no point in human history where the outlook was particularly positive. I mean, we've gone through volcanic eruptions that blotted out the sun. We've gone through bubonic plagues. We've gone through complete civilization destructions, multiple layers of civilizational destructions over time. Invasions, wars. When was the last time we saw a war? Nobody reading this article has ever seen a war. There's just so many variables in life. Think about back to, cavemen when they were trying to have kids. They had to fight saber-toothed tigers every single day. Imagine if they had the same mentality, like, oh, babe, I was thinking about having kids, but the fact that I have to risk my life literally every single day just to go out and get some meat for our family, it's just too dangerous. The future's too dark. I don't want to actually have kids. Can you imagine? Anyone at any point in history could have made any number of excuses to not have kids for exactly, well, not exactly the same reasons, but the similar narratives. The future is scary. The future is uncertain. That's really all they're saying with this, right? Because they say in the subtitle, in a world of pandemic chaos, political strife, and climate catastrophe, some see the future as too dark to procreate. The future has never not been dark. That's the point I'm making. It's not particularly worse at this point in time. I mean, hell, if you go back 30 years, we were in the middle of an impending ice age, and we see how that turned out, right? But now, all of a sudden, we take the climate catastrophe dead serious now. After 50, 60 years of it being completely wrong, now it's dead serious, guys. Dead serious. And the climate change. So I think it's also funny that they're saying like, ooh, a 1.5 degrees Celsius increase in temperature, global average over 100 years. That's way more scary than, I don't know. Why aren't they mentioning supply chain outages, China, cyber attacks that are going to take out the electrical grid, solar flares, mega earthquakes, Yellowstone exploding? Come on, let's get some realistic terror and fear here at least. 1.5 degrees over 100 years. You expect me to have an emotional reaction to that? No, sorry. I don't really care. So the game they're playing, they're not even doing it very well. They're trying to scare you. It's a terrible, rationale for scaring you. Climate catastrophe. Oh yeah, 1.5 degrees over 200 years or whatever. Come on. Seriously, people? And then, of course, they show like a single spinster with a dog. This particular one chooses to have a dog, not a cat, but they always have a dog or a cat because they use animals as proxies for children. That's the biggest thing that you have to realize. They always have cats or dogs, guys. Always. 100%. The people who say they don't want to have kids, they always have an animal because their natural instinct as women is to raise children. You can never program that out, which is why they all have cats and dogs. That's why, who was it? It was JP Morgan, I think, predicted that the cat food industry was going to be booming in like the next, coming decades or so because of exactly the same thing that I've talked about here, about the fact that all these women are going to get in their late 30s, early 40s, and they're going to realize they're single and they don't have kids. They're going to buy a lot of cats, guys. So get that Purina stock, cash, buy now. JP Morgan knows, and they know the analysis better than anybody. They know the markets. That's their entire job, is to understand the markets, understand the trends, and forecast the future. The best people on the planet who can forecast the future are forecasting an epidemic of lonely single women. So what do they know that you don't know? It's a question you should be asking yourself. Anyway, I haven't even gotten into the article yet. We'll start reading that after we get to these stereos from Mike.
That just tells you how complete the psychological manipulation is, that you can convince people to negate their own most basic drive and desire
Exactly.
as a human being
Exactly.
to procreate and continue the species.
Yeah.
That's really impressive and kind of terrifying. But honestly, these people are brainwashed. I don't really care if they procreate or not. So it really no skin off my nose. They can self-delete all they want.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and that's the point I was trying to make. Is that the procreation is the prime directive, folks. That is if without getting philosophical and all touchy-feely about it, that is why you're here on the planet. You're the result of a continual chain of procreation that lasted for millions and millions and millions of years. And now because you read an article about global warming, you're going to cut that off. You're going to bring that to a stop. You're going to just dead end. It's fascinating to see how they can control the most prime directive, the strongest biological urge. If they can get people to rationalize away the strongest biological urge, it's not so much the fact that we're convincing people not to breed anymore. It's the fact that they have the ability to convince you of anything up to and including overriding your own innate biological drives. That is terrifying, as you say, Osis. That's we now have the capability to en masse control your innate biological urges and your thoughts to the degree to where we override your actual human nature. That's pretty crazy. Pretty crazy, and that's an understatement to call it pretty crazy. He's got a follow-up here.
Well, I'll give you my opinion on why they do that, because first of all, it's basically there's not a whole lot you can do about it. It's insurmountable. Mm-hmm. But because it's insurmountable, you can basically justify anything because there's people that'll buy it hook, line, and sinker. Mm-hmm. The other things that you mentioned, things can actually be done about, and they don't want to actually make any changes. They don't want to improve things for the better, because that doesn't benefit them. Having existential dread is working. It works in their benefit. There's no reason for them to do good things.
Right, and here's the thing too. There's nuance to this. I'm not saying that it's just bad absolutely to not want to have kids. That's perfectly fine to decide not to have kids. But what I am saying is that if you chose not to have kids because of climate change, that's not your opinion. I'll say this again. That is not your opinion. That was an opinion that was assigned to you by society. Okay, so you can choose not to have kids for whatever reason you want. But if it's this reason, that was assigned to you. Okay, so, realize at least that's not the result of your own independent thought. That's the result of society implanting that idea into your head. So, I mean, I don't even have to get into the reasons for encouraging procreation because, we're in a reproductive deficit right now. The way things are going, we're not going to even meet replacement levels, right, for reproduction for kids. It used to be 4 kids per family. Now it's less than 1 or less than 1.5, something like that. In general, there are certain requirements to sustaining civilization. One of those things is procreating and having kids. So beyond any personal motivations, like, oh, God says just have kids, I think that you can't live a fulfilled life without having kids. There's many different angles you can take on that. But the bottom line is civilization and human race will cease to exist if the reproductive rate is below a certain point. So is that better or worse than global warming? And the other side of the coin is, Osis, like you said, if people are so susceptible to this kind of mind control, do we really want to try and convince them otherwise? Do we really want to try and convince them to procreate? Because the other angle you could take, like I said, there's a lot of angles you could take on this thing. This is natural selection in action. It used to be you had to go out and get slaughtered by a saber-toothed tiger, or you get bitten by a poisonous snake, or eat a poisonous berry, or die throughout winter because you don't know how to store food. There were selection forces acting on you that would encourage you to make the right choices to continue on. We've largely gotten rid of those, but now, like I said, we've moved beyond physical selection forces. We're now into psychological selection forces. This is a psychological selection force convincing you not to have children. How is that any different from a tiger killing you before you were able to have children? If we're to make the analogy back to the natural world again, without society, without the blanket buffer of civilization to kind of obfuscate things, that's the reality. The end result is that basically you died at an early age, only now you're dying psychologically as opposed to physically, in terms of the reproductive rate. Okay, let's actually read a little bit from this article here. As you can tell, I got a lot to say about this particular topic. Before she married her husband, Kirsten Little considered him ideal father material. Quote, "We were always under the mentality of, oh yeah, when you get married, you have kids. It was the expected thing." Yeah, expected it. That is, until the couple took an 8-month road trip after Little got her master's degree in public health at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. Oh. So this is one of the problems right here. We're 2 sentences in, and we've already discovered one of the problems. Public education. Guys, public education is definitely leaning people towards a particular bend on this particular issue, right? Quote, while we were out west, California, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, we were driving through the areas where the whole forest was dead, trees knocked over. Little said, we went through southern Louisiana, which was hit by 2 hurricanes last year, and the whole towns were leveled. Massive trees were pulled up by their roots. Now 30 and 2 years into her marriage, Little feels, quote, the burden of knowledge. Oh, man. Wow, that's a new one. I have not heard that. The burden of knowledge. She said, the couple sees mounting disaster, and when reading the latest climate change reports and Arctic ice forums, anxiety about having children has set in. Why is the average person reading Arctic ice forums? We need to really ask ourselves that question. Why do you care about Arctic ice? Yeah, Aaron Warren in the YouTube chat says, how are those polar bears doing? I think they're doing just fine. Last I checked, their population is actually growing. How about the deserts? Yeah. Has the Arctic mass expanded or contracted? Yep. This guy knows exactly what's going on. But, I mean, Aaron, she's on Arctic ice forums, okay? So she knows what's going on. So over the last year, I thought, oh my God, I have to make a decision. It's not that far away, but I know how I could change my mind. Over the next 10 years, I feel like there are only going to be more reasons to not want to have a kid, not the other way around. So it's interesting that her motivations have been completely externalized. Not maybe completely, but it looks like by what she's said so far, everything she's rationalizing for having or not having a kid is due to things out here. Out there, externalities, okay? Things that are happening so far away. Arctic ice. Hey, honey, do you want to have kids? I don't know. Well, what's the Arctic ice look like? Why is that part of the decision-making process? It should not be, but somehow it's become part of the decision-making process for modern people. And not just women. I'm not just knocking on women. You know, dudes are part of this too. Obviously, she's wearing the pants in this relationship. Otherwise, a dude would just say, yeah, let's have kids. But he's on board to some degree as well. In a note to investors this past summer, Morgan Stanley analysts concluded that the movement to not have children. Oh, this is it. This is what I was talking about. It wasn't J.P. Morgan. It was Morgan Stanley. So they're actually citing what I was talking about. In a note to investors this past summer, Morgan Stanley analysts concluded that the, quote, movement to not have children over fears of climate change is growing and impacting fertility rates quicker than any preceding trend in the field of fertility decline. See? That's exactly what I said. So Morgan Stanley, the best forecasting analysts that we have on the planet, are telling you there's going to be a fertility crisis coming up. There is much debate, however, on the idea over that having fewer children is the best way to address the problem. In the interview with Vox in April, Kimberly Nicholas, a climate scientist and co-author of a 2017 study of the most effective lifestyle changes to reduce climate impact, said that population reduction was not the answer. Quote, "It is true that more people will consume more and resources and cause more greenhouse gas emissions," she said, "but that's not really the relevant time frame for actually stabilizing the climate, given that we have this decade to cut emissions in half." So that's interesting because time frame. Now we're talking about time frames. Climate change is a time frame that's very long, very wide, right? And children is a very narrow. Deciding not to have children is a very narrow time frame decision. You only live maybe 100 years max, and that's in the terms of climate change and how it's affected over time. 100 years really isn't anything at all. That's barely even weather. 100 years, you can barely even predict the weather in those small amounts of time frames. So the disparity between time frames that we're looking at is pretty interesting. Why would you decide not to have kids now? They're going to consume more resources, for like the next 20, 30, 40 years. But climate change is going to happen like hundreds of years from now. That's what we're trying to prevent, by the way. The whole climate summit thing, the Paris Climate Accord, all that. The point was to reduce the temperature from increasing, prevent the temperature from increasing like 1.4 degrees in, what was it, like 250 years, something like that. Somebody fact check me on that, but it's way out there. A poll in 2018 by Morning Consult for the New York Times found that among young adults in the United States who said they had expected to have fewer children, let's start that over again. A poll into 2018 by Morning Consult for the New York Times found that among young adults in the United States who said they had or expected to have fewer children than the number they had considered ideal, 33% listed climate change, while 27% named population growth as a concern. So let's take this back to the rule that I laid out regarding the COVID stuff. What do we see with our own eyes versus what we're being told in the data? Now, what are we seeing with our own eyes that indicates population growth as being a concern? Now, I look at things like cities, and I can see that those are completely unsustainable, even the ones we have right now. Futuristic speaking, oh my God, I can't imagine how concentrated those are going to be. LA, imagine LA in like 50, 100 years. So I can see that as a problem, but I think I would love to see a partner poll to this to correlate their opinions with their location, because I would be willing to bet the vast majority of people who are listing climate change and population growth as a main concern, and one of the reasons why they're not having kids, they live in population zones, large, dense population zones like cities, metropolitan areas, things like that, and they have what I would call a skewed perspective, because the only way you could see population growth as a concern is if you're living in cities and you're seeing them not being able to grow at scale. The other thing I could think is a valid concern in terms of scale and population growth is the supply chain. But that's not necessarily a issue of can the supply chain produce enough. It's a matter of logistics in how the supply chain is set up. Currently, we're relying on China for everything. So everything has to come over on a boat, get unloaded, and get it driven on a truck across America or a train or whatever it is. That is not a sustainable model for production, okay? And that is a legitimate concern for population growth, because the larger our population gets, the more we're going to rely on China for those goods to be shipped across the ocean, relying on ports, increasing single points of failure, things like that. I don't think this is the kind of rationale they're thinking when they talk about this kind of stuff, but I'm giving them my objective observations as to how, I'm trying to be generous here. There are ways you could see population growth as a concern, but they're not issues that can't be fixed. That's the point I'm saying. Move out of the cities. There's plenty of land out there. Plenty of land. Guys, we got so many trees that we need to start cutting them down. There's too many trees. Too many trees in the world. I'm pretty sure that every single forest on the planet has grown significantly in the last 10 years. All the boreal forests in the upper latitudes. The Amazon, I think, even grew. There's plenty of land to move into. So population growth as concerns actual logical physical space, it's not a problem. So why do they think population growth is a concern? Well, I think we all know the answer to that. It's due to their opinions being assigned to them by things like the New York Times. Paul's got a couple stereos here. Let's go to stereo.
This whole discussion is it's hilarious because these people who aren't breeding because of climate change, or we know definitionally they're leftists or neoliberals. We can confidently conclude they're not conservative Christians. It is bizarre and ironic because I am an atheist myself, don't have a belief in a higher power, was a new atheist 15 years ago, but what I learned was I got a humanist ethic. I'm a real racist. I believe in people, Homo sapiens, not pigs and cows and anything else. Why are we worthy? Because we can think and we can feel. We can make music, appreciate the beauty of a sunrise or sunset, understanding that you can make something that you will never enjoy, like planting a seed or making a building, that only is probably enjoyed by following generations.
Yeah, that's right. I think you know, a lot of people are concerned about if you actually, it's ironic because you listen to these people who are career-oriented women in particular these days that come out of colleges. They're concerned about their purpose in life, their goals, and I see this a lot in the van life community a lot because I'm obviously, you guys know, I'm building out a box truck right now to be a mobile tiny home, so I'm pretty involved in the van life community, and I gotta say that whole community, like 80% of it is people, women, and running away from their past, like just desperately seeking out some kind of purpose in life. And they think that like freedom and being able to travel and look at rocks here and look at rocks over there is going to somehow give them some satisfaction in life. The answer is right there in their innate programming the whole time. If you want to build something, if you want to create something, like you said, kind of planting a seed, the option is there and it exists independent of society because it just takes one other person to create a family. The family is the greatest thing you could ever create. It doesn't matter how good your career is. It's going to be forgotten. Your position will be filled the second you die, the second you move on, or you might get fired even. I mean, nobody cares about anything. They operate under the false presumption that society cares about them or anything that they do. That's false. Nobody cares. That's the glory of, that's actually a good thing because guess what? If you're black, no, nobody cares that you're black. If you're transgender, nobody cares until you try to make it a point. Nobody cares about you at all. The only people that would care about you in the universe is the family that you create. That's the ultimate creation. He's got a follow up here.
And of course, raising a child, things that humans can appreciate. And so I see these same people, people like me, the 2000s me, the aughts, the 20 aughts, going with this new conviction of hopelessness for humanity. Oh, I can't have children because the world will crash because of global warming. Like, oh, you didn't learn anything, the good things that came out of new atheism, if you will. But say what it is. It was the cathedrals or the citadels attack on the cultural hegemony of Christianity in America and the broader West. These people who are now hopeless about having children, they were then, remain now, totally captive to, as you said earlier, the outsourcing their thoughts, more so their entire philosophical outlook on life. It's we just need to not worry about these people. They will solve themselves.
And that's really the rub of it all. You know, going back to what Osis mentioned earlier, this is natural selection in action now, guys. I've talked about this many times before. We're beyond physical selection forces. These are psychological selection forces. And do we expand any energy trying to convince these people otherwise? If they are convinced that they want to remove themselves from existence and their genetic line from existence? I don't really try to convince people. I try to get opinions. The fun thing is trying to get an opinion from someone who doesn't want to have kids. That isn't an opinion that I've already heard a billion times. And I don't really ever hear unique opinions. I don't ever hear like you said, Paul, I don't hear unique rationality. And it's clear that these are opinions that have been assigned to them. It's not, and again, these aren't, I said I know a lot of people like this. This isn't a slight on anyone who thinks this way. This isn't an insult. It's just an observation. Okay, that's all this really is. And like I said, I don't like to intervene in other people's lives. I'm not here to convince anybody to do one thing or the other. We're just examining from an objective observer's perspective why this epidemic of choosing not to have families is occurring. Why is Morgan Stanley seeing a sharp spike in fertility problems coming? Why? What's going on here? That's all we want to do here is understand the world. We're not trying to change anybody's mind. Let's see. I saw some good comments come in. We have, what was it, Phil? Phil B says, geologist here. We have lost all perspective. Thank you. See, I think perspective is important to keep in mind. 100 years is the blink of an eye. A volcano could erupt tomorrow and spew more CO2 than we've emitted in 100 years. Yes, exactly. Exactly. When was the last time we had a significant volcano eruption? Not in my lifetime. I mean, Mount St. Helens? Not really. I think that was actually before my lifetime, but still, that's not even, that's not significant. And by the way, guys, I think it's been, feel free to chime in here if you're still here, but I think the narrative around the dinosaur extinction has actually changed. It was not due to the asteroid. It's more so thought that it was actually due to a persistent volcanic eruptions happening across the entire planet over like thousands of years. And just releasing so much greenhouse gas, destroying the land with lava flows, miles deep lava. Have we seen miles deep lava at any point in time in our lifetimes? No. How many electric cars do we need to drive to prevent miles deep lava from coming out of the earth? Answer me that question. How many solar panels do I need on my roof to prevent the volcanoes? How many solar panels do I need to prevent the solar flare? Okay, so again, now I have a whole different opinion on climate change that I think I went over last show or the show before, but to summarize, we should be accelerating production, accelerating science to meet and overcome these challenges that we're going to face of things that are right now out of our control. Hell, go watch Don't Look Up. I watched Don't Look Up this weekend, or not this week, New Year's with some buddies. The whole premise of Don't Look Up is that an asteroid is coming, and we have the option to use technology to deflect it, but it just so happens the technology is not good enough. And I fear that movie, despite the fact that it's supposed to be a comedy, is actually representative of current reality. Wherein, if we have a massive actual catastrophic climate something or other that's going to happen, not 1 degree increase over 300 years, an asteroid or a volcano, whatever it may be, solar flare, we are not going to have sufficient technology to actually overcome or deflect that event because we've stifled production and innovation due to climate change and CO2 emissions. Okay, we're doing the exact opposite of what we need to do. We're in a race against time. Realistically, I'm on board with the climate people. I agree that at one point in time in the future, the climate or some external circumstance will end civilization as we know it, whether it's a gamma ray burst, an asteroid, a solar flare, you name it, volcanoes. Something's going to happen, guys. And if we're not advanced sufficiently to the point to where we can survive or dodge or at least have another planet to live on, we're done. That's it. So, ironically, I agree with these climate change people in the outcome, which is total death and destruction. But the way they see it and the way they think it's going to happen, that's not what's actually going to happen. And it's the way they see it is totally solvable, totally fixable through innovation and advancement and production, not the destruction of production, innovation, and advancement. Let's see. Dari says we can be environmentally aware while also staying productive and maintain a good, sustainable quality of life. Yeah, I think so. How many gallons of diesel do you need to drive from one coast to the other? I don't know. I never driven a diesel car. Trump had started a problem to replace a few billion trees and to replace trees that are harvested with fires like in California. Yeah, see, that's the other thing. She mentioned in the article, she went through California and Oregon and saw dead trees and dead forests. That's because we're not spending enough time and energy on production on cleaning them up. That's not the climate that's doing that. The trees just naturally die over time. And that's why the fires are so bad on the West Coast. That's why the climate events are so catastrophic and so extreme. It's because human inefficiencies, not because of the climate. That's natural. It's natural. Trees die. It's our fault for not picking them up and cleaning out the forests because the government says they care about climate change, but they actually don't, so they don't clean up the trees. They just want to funnel money to and from corporations that give them the most amount of lobbying. It's not really about climate change, right? You know what I'm saying? Let's see here. When the earth... Oh, here's a good opinion. Interesting one anyway. When the earth warms, there is more arable land for more people to develop. Warming helps growth. How about that? Is that an opinion that you've heard anywhere else? Now, I don't know if it's necessarily true or not. I think it's true. But you don't ever hear that side of the argument. You never hear what is the end result of the climate warming by 1 degree outside of the fact that we're going to lose a little bit of shoreline here and there. You don't ever hear that. And that's another giveaway that you're dealing with someone who's not honest about the situation, not an objective observer, not giving you both sides of the story. What's up, Ariel? Welcome to the chat. You're late, but it's okay. A lifeboat off Earth, the planet is our cradle. We can either die out of it or die in it. Yeah, yes. I mean, look, you can talk about how far-fetched that is all you want and say, oh, we don't need to go to other planets. Or it's all, yeah, nature don't play, okay? And the only reason you don't understand that is because the average human brain can't really comprehend time that much. There's been some stuff that's happened to this planet that's been so utterly catastrophic that your brain could not comprehend it. And it just so happens that we live in such a tiny sliver of that time period that we won't ever see it. So we out of sight, out of mind. Out of sight, out of mind applies right here. Some of us can forecast, see, and it requires an imagination, really is what it does. It requires an imagination. You have to have an imagination to see the different possibilities for the climate catastrophes that we're really going to be talking about. That's why I'm talking about things like gamma ray bursts. Do you think anyone knows what a gamma ray burst is? No. Nobody knows about the lava traps, the extinction of the dinosaurs. They think it was asteroids. There's some wild stuff that's going to be happening or could be happening. It's just a matter of time. Matter of time, folks. Let's see. Some of that was arson. Yeah, true. Some of the fires in the West Coast were arson. Climate collapse or Armageddon, which is coming? Well, see, it's not Armageddon if we have the sufficient technology to overcome it. So that is the hinging variable, is our level of advancement. Think of it as a video game, right? You got to get to a certain level. If we're not at a certain level by the time the timer runs out, this is all really for nothing. Aaron says, honest climate scientists will tell you that the vast amount of factors involved in assessing climate is still well beyond our grasp. Yeah, that seems to be my understanding of it as well. I'm not here just to deny everything the climate alarmists are going to say. I'm just saying that the variables are too complex for us to really understand, and the time frames are beyond general human comprehension. I mean, just 10,000 years ago, we went through was it 10,000 years ago? The Younger Dryas. Literally, what was it? The theory is a meteor hit somewhere up north, melted a bunch of ice, flooded everything in North America. Everything was underwater. Like, that's how the Grand Canyon got here. That's how a lot of the geographical formations are in America. Guys, anything could happen. Okay. That was fun. Let's go to Osis and chat.
The other reason I advocate for these people not having children is because they usually destroy the minds of their children and put them in the mind state of existential dread, and a lot of them end up killing themselves because they're afraid of what's going to happen if the human race continues. So between the mental abuse they would bestow upon their children and the mental abuse they bestow upon themselves, I don't get why they don't just, end it now and get it over with. They're not going to procreate. What's the point of their existence? Just, take care of it. Get it over with. You're wasting resources, right? I mean, you're just a problem.
No, they do serve a purpose, and this is the most cynical side of the argument. Okay, this is as bad as it gets for me. Now, this is the line between consumers and producers. These people exist to be consumers. Now, when I say producer, you think of somebody picking vegetables or somebody building a house, something like that. No, production in this can be those things, but at the ultimate manifestation of creation, production is creating a family. So most people are not anything ever in their entire lives, will never ever be anything more than consumers. Now, I mean, if I really want to get super negative with it, I could draw a correlation between them and something like locusts. They exist, they live, they consume a lot, and then they die. That's it. That's a summary of probably, well, not right now, but in the future. That's going to be the summary of the majority of people. Reproduction could be, look at things like Gattaca, science fiction movies, things where reproduction is not just something you can do freely. Right now, reproduction is something you can do freely. That's the worst part about it. In the future, reproduction is not something you'll probably be able to do at will. Just look at China, for God's sake. They're already doing it in modern Earth, in Earth today. There are countries where your ability to reproduce is not a given. And in America, it's just a foregone conclusion. Like, oh, we don't even care. It's just, we don't even think about it. We just take it for granted, the fact that we can produce. But in the future, it may not necessarily be the case. And that is because we need to really, if there are a shadowy cabal of people controlling everything up at the top, as a lot of people here would like to suggest, then it would seem that they want to create and maintain a certain ratio of consumers to producers, right? So there's always going to be more consumers than producers. And it's ironic that the same people who cry about concentration of wealth and wealth inequality aren't talking more about the fact that the ratio of consumers to producers is way off. But I don't think they're intelligent enough to see producers in terms of somebody creating a family and having kids, things like that. So if they were, they would see that, they would draw that correlation, they would understand that you as a single person existing as an atomized entity in an economy are really going to do nothing besides consume products, consume media, consume YouTube, consume, and then die. That's it. You're gonna generate some money for some companies. You're going to spend a bunch of money, and then you're gonna die, and that's it. And to me, that just doesn't sound like a very fulfilling life. And that's the rub right there. People confuse, because we talked about this procreation stuff previously. They always try to measure it with happiness. Are you going to be happy if you have a kid? Are you going to be less happy, more happy? Happiness is only one variable in the equation. And this is what you don't realize until you have kids, or until you actually do have really big, ambitious endeavors in your life. Happiness, if you're chasing happiness, that's like low-level basic stuff. That's really easy to get. It's fleeting. It comes and goes. It's pretty easy to generate if you have systems that can do it. What you really want, what you're really trying to chase in life is fulfillment. And you don't get fulfillment from watching Netflix all day and not having kids. Having kids is a source of fulfillment, while also being sometimes a source of unhappiness because you have to get up late at night, things like that, right? So we're not even looking at the full picture when we're trying to evaluate whether or not we have kids, because the fulfillment never enters into the equation. Legacy never enters into the equation. I think about it from terms, I always love to take historical perspectives and think about how things were before we have all the buffers and the absolute disgusting soft niceties of modernity. Think about if you were living like me, I'm half Swedish, so my people were Vikings. If you were a Viking that refused to have kids, why? You probably would have been exiled from the village. They wouldn't even want to talk to you. You're a loser. The whole point of having was to raise a family, have kids, form a war band, go raid the Europeans, take all their stuff, creating legacies. That's what, like Thor's son, all these names, Odin's son, things like that. They have names, they have legacies, they have stories, they have legends, they have traditions. You don't have any of that stuff unless you have a family to pass it down through. And for some reason, within the last, 200 years, we've eliminated that and replaced it with cats and skyscrapers and Netflix. I don't know. Let's see. Okay, so let's see. Paul says they're smart enough, but the frame they approach life from has been totally corrupted, as Yuri Bezmenov would say, ideologically subverted, demoralized. That's correct. Yeah, frame is a concept that I will be trying to educate people a lot about with the new channel, because people often, as you point out, have the completely wrong frame or don't have any frame at all. Frame being your own personal point of reference. That's goes directly back to what I talked about with outsourcing your thoughts. If you're outsourcing your thoughts, you've lost frame completely. frame means maintaining your own personal best interests at all times, despite what the externalities are. People don't do that anymore. They look at the externalities first. They say, oh, honey, I want to have kids. What are the Arctic ice caps doing? That is, no. Hey, Holly, what's up? Welcome to the chat here. Glad to have you here. Let's see. The no child policy bombed in China, so they rescinded it. Yep. Yeah, they did. Too many guys, not enough women. That's right. Holly says that's why they want women back to work. Instead of being in the home, they lose 50% of income taxes. Exactly. They want women. They looked at women and they were like, hey, guys, it says here that half the population is not in the workforce. That's a lot of tax revenue we're missing out on. That's a lot of production, a lot of consumption that we could be taking advantage of here. What can we do to get women in the workforce to also be consumers? Well, let's give them the sexual revolution, birth control, and the feminism lie. Boom. 50% of the population is now also producers. Sad. Holly says, you truly become an adult when you have a child. Your focus has to move from yourself to another, and that's the other thing. Yeah, these people today are inherently selfish. They don't ever want to shift the focus away from what they want. I want to go on vacation. I want to travel. I want to do this. I want to do that. It's from start to finish, their life is really all about them and what they want. And by that very nature, they will never experience true fulfillment and satisfaction, because I think there's an element of charity. Charity is not the right word. There's a different word for it. Philanthropy. There's an element of philanthropy to fulfillment in that you have to do something for somebody else. That's the inherent human nature, is that we're community-based, and if we're only doing what we want, what we're doing, you're not going to get any fulfillment out of that. You got to do something for somebody else, whether that's your family members, community members, your children, etc. Let's see here. Rockefellers came up with the women to work idea. Rockefellers, huh? So that was a long time ago. Second wave feminism was a total and complete disaster for women and the 99%. Labor pool was almost doubled and wages fell, combined with taking us off the gold standard. People lost. Yeah, mistakes were made. That's to say the least. Or, depending on whose side you're on, what perspective you're taking from, mistakes were made, or it was great. It was a great decision. Great choice. Great choice. Two sides of the coin are the tax base and the workforce's wage. Women in the workplace was a two-course dessert for the capitalists. All the leftists say they hate. Yeah, it's a little bit ironic that the leftists are the ones advocating for women's having careers and getting in the workforce and not having children and things like that. Despite the fact, this is funny too. This is what I'm talking about when looking at reality, interpreting information, and correlating it in your brain. We talked about it earlier in the stream with COVID data. Would you say that women are getting happier just based on what you're seeing? You go out into public, you see shaved heads, purple hairs, high-waisted jeans, terrible fashion. It seems like they hate their femininity. They hate themselves. We're seeing suicide rates. We're hearing stories of suicides, depression, anxiety. Everybody knows women that are on depression pills, or anxiety pills. We can see with our own eyes that something is off. We don't have to have a study to tell us that women are unhappy. Coincidentally, that is also what the studies will show you, is that women are the happiness is plummeting over time as the feminism and the careers and the earnings and the college degrees are going up. It's only a matter of time before somebody scratches their chin and says, maybe we're not doing something right. During World War II, women were needed. Yeah, everyone was needed during World War II. Got to make those shells, right? We need more money to live a better life and pretend like we care. Exactly. Yeah, that's what the government wants you to think. So that's the thing. The government wants you. The government needs you, not wants you. The government needs you to continue to invest in them. So they're going to tell you things like, you have to have a job. You have to compete with the Joneses. You have to have status. You have to get the nicer car, get the Instagram page. You have to be able to show off. That's what happiness is. Happiness, ironically, results from more investment into the system that generates wealth for the government and increases your dependency on them. That's a little, not very many people can connect those dots. Whereas you always have the option to, exit society, leave society, And that doesn't mean physically. You don't have to physically leave society. You can logically leave society by exiting social media, exiting the rat race, forming your own communities, not watching centralized media, things like that. And I think if you just tell these women to not watch, or not just women, but guys, anyone who's suffering from climate crisis syndrome, or whatever we want to call it, right? If you just told them to not consume centralized media, I mean, that would probably solve the majority of their problems right there. RL says, the more they try not to look feminine, the more unhappy they probably are. Yes, guys, that is, I mean, if you're single and on the dating market, like your boy, it's really, really bad out there right now. Women are actively trying to look less feminine, to behave less feminine, to act more masculine. It's not attractive. And they think that acting, appearing like a man is what men want, because again, we're feminizing the men and we're masculinizing the women. So the incentives are they're swapped right now. And it's not good. It's really tough. It's tough out there. Aaron says, get climate crisis syndrome into the DSM. You know what? I'm going to have my own DSM. The alt-centrists will track our own real mental disorders, because we need to start documenting society. We need to start creating alternative records of history, because the centralized records of history right now that are going to be dug up in 2,000 years, they're not telling the truth. Those books are going to say that transgenderism is totally fine. Those books are going to say being obese is healthy. Those books are going to say there's 8,000 genders. Those books are going to say that climate crisis syndrome is not real. And this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying living and existing in a different society. Writing history over again. We have to do it ourselves, guys. Nobody's going to do it for us. Because the real stuff, the mainstream, the centralized stuff, that's not real. And it's not an accurate representation of what's happening here. People are going to read our history books and our tablets and our memory cards in 2,000 years. They'll be like, what the hell was going on? They didn't really think that there's 89 genders, did there? They didn't think that being obese was actually healthy, did they? So some of us have to actually say, hey, yo, guys, in the future, we weren't that stupid, Josiah says true happiness comes from a relationship with God, in my opinion. I would agree. But we probably have a slightly different definition of God. Donnie Brooks says, you got to understand the young generation were raised on soy. Yes, raised on soy, but also raised by parents who were on soy. That's the problem. The fact that they were fed soy, you can solve that through hormonal treatment. But the fact that they were raised by parents that were on soy, that is not good at all. Holly says, women in positions like pilots are the best of the best when you base in on merit. 1% of women can get there. Yeah, we're all dust in the wind, man. Yeah, no, that's we don't have to be. That's the thing. If we're complacent, we sit around, we do nothing, we let the fear overtake us, we shut down production, we stifle the advancement of the human race, technology, things like that. Yeah, we're all dust in the wind, because eventually we're just going to get smoked out by an asteroid or volcano, whatever it is. You got to think of that like a video game, okay? We're in a race. We have to beat the timer. That's it. And we can beat the timer. And I know there's a lot of people out there, especially more on the conservative side, who's you're talking about technology and advancement, transhumanism and robots and mind control with the computers in your brain and all. I understand that perspective. I get it. I get the apprehension of technology, but that's more of it's an exposure thing. It's an acclimation process to where if you are slapped in the face with the concept of a new technology, you're going to immediately find it offensive. You're going to think of the worst possible ways that it could be used. Yeah, of course. I think that's natural. That's good. It's a good reaction that you're having by saying, oh, technology. Why do we rely on technology? Why do we want to look at the future? Why do we... Okay, yeah, understandable. That's good. But you got to understand also that you have been slowly, gradually, over time, exposed and adopted similar, if not greater, technological advancements in your lifetime that you now love and adore. Okay, so you just got to understand that it's kind of like the hedonic treadmill, wherein you're exposed to pleasure, you want to get more pleasure. Exposure to pleasure reduces your actual pleasure that you get to it. It's kind of similar to technology. When you're exposed to the fact that you have a tablet you can play games on 10 hours a day, or VR, or advanced medical tools that you can use at the hospital to fix your problem like this, whereas 50 years ago that did not exist, we love that. We love technology then. We love high-speed internet. I love the fact that I can have a satellite internet wherever I want on the entire planet. We have 5G on our phones. We love all that. Oh yeah, but 50 years ago, if I told you that you would be carrying around a device that was tracking your location and everything you do, everywhere you go, at all times of the day and night, you would say, "Oh my God, technology!" Oh, you'd be saying the same exact thing you're saying about the future technology now. You see my point? So we can't have this fear of advancement. It's natural. It's good that you're saying that, and I'm acknowledging that you're saying that, and it is good because I feel that as well. But there's always a potential for misuse of these things. But as we go and get exposed to it, we'll find that they'll integrate well into society, and it will actually help us. They will help us. Paul's got a stereo.
By the way, when you talk about raised by soy, we sort of get it. It's men are getting more effeminate, women more masculine. And there's a growing body of evidence that is being pieced together that it's all in the environment, literally in the food and the chemicals, BPAs, all these containers you see saying BPA free. Great spot to start going down this rabbit hole. Joe Rogan Experience number 1638, Dr. Shauna Swan. This is back in April. Hour 37 minutes. That's not too long either. So I'll just read the description on it. She's an environmental epidemiologist who examines the impact of chemical exposure, a lot of it's in plastics, on reproductive health and child development. Her book is Countdown, and that's a great starting spot. Never microwave anything in plastic. Best.
Yeah, that's actually something I started doing this year. I used to steam my peas in the package. Now I dump everything into glass before I heat them up. But you're right, man. Even if you, again, without having to assign what we're seeing, the decline in fertility, to any kind of particular shadowy cabals or malicious narratives, it's all explainable through like endocrine disruptors in the food, the shampoo you put on your body, all the things that you put on your body or touch yourself with. All that stuff seeps into your body and affects your chemicals, your internal hormones, BPAs in the plastic. It's all like I said, I just talked about it earlier in the stream. You have to take active measures to just break even on existence in modern society today, because there's people out there who are eating peas from plastic bags every single day, multiple times a day, and then they have no idea why they have cancer at 45. Or, there's alcoholics who've been drinking alcohol since they were 12 years old, and they're surprised that they have cancer when they're 35. You know what I mean? It's like active. You can't not just simply exist and not think about these things, and then not be surprised when the result comes to harvest. Soap is my next thing. Yeah, soap. I've been on that for a while. I've been pretty heavy on the endocrine disruptors and the natural testosterone stuff for a while. Donnie Brooks says the testosterone studies in young men are very alarming. Yeah, they are. So there's a lot of factors in that. The food you eat is one of them, but the physical activity is another one too, I think. Nobody's getting any physical activity anymore. Personally, I just had a gigantic home gym delivered this morning because there's no gyms near me that I can go to anymore. Normally I go 3 times a week, active measures, but you got to fight it. You got to fight against it every single step of the way, especially now that, I'm getting into my 30s. Testosterone's going to start going down. You have to take active measures. Russian bots all over the place. Yep. Most men under 50 have never swung a hammer, used a wrench, or even been in an actual fight. Yes, accurate. Because, again, the buffers of modern society are what are preventing them from experiencing those things naturally. When I say buffers, I mean, buffers. You guys know what buffers means? It means it's it's cushioning you from experiencing consequences with some kind of artificially placed thing. So in this particular case, police, for example, would be a buffer against violence. Cheap labor is a buffer against having to go out and do your gardening and lawn work yourself, having to go chop down that tree. Electricity is a buffer against having to harvest firewood. Grocery stores and mass farming are buffers against having to grow your own food. So we live in a society full of buffers for everything, and we need to acknowledge that when that's one of the key central points to the philosophy that I'll be working on and elaborating on the new YouTube channel that I'll be creating. Paul says, people don't realize how nuanced diet is and how they actually have to actively learn and act upon it. Yes, actually, I just recently got one of my friends into downloading and tracking their diet with an app called Chronometer, which is really awesome because you can track everything you eat. It gives you the nutrients, micronutrients, macronutrients, everything. It tells you where you're deficient. Now, where can I think of a situation where it would be good to know if I'm deficient in particular vitamins? Where would that have been particularly relevant in my life in the last 2 or so years? Oh yeah, that's right, with the pandemic and vitamin D. Because if people were actually conscious about what they were putting into their bodies, we could have, again, avoided the entire pandemic. So you think that I'm just pushing this health stuff as some kind of inconsequential, hey, like slap on the wrist, you gotta watch your health. No, guys, this affects you. The collective society's health and our awareness in general determines whether or not we have pandemics and lockdowns and governmental power increases. And all of this was predicated off of the fact that society in general in the West is incredibly unhealthy. The COVID stuff, the lockdowns, all of it. So there's more than one reason why I'm advocating for the personal health measures. It ends up having a collective effect. Yeah, Aaron says diet and exercise equals the fountain of youth. It's true. It's true. RL says just being low in one particular vitamin or mineral can really negatively impact your body and mind. Oh yeah, massively. I mean, just being negligent, deficient in one or two nutrients, micronutrients like B12 or magnesium. That's a big one. If you guys aren't on the magnesium train yet, oh my God, you got to get on the magnesium train. If you're deficient in those things for long periods over time, why do you think we have all these cancer cases, these heart disease cases, these things like that? It's due to long-term nutritional deficiencies that, in reality, the human body is amazing. It's incredible that we can even last that long, decades and decades, without having all the nutrients that we need in our bodies. We're somehow like getting the bare minimum from the McDonald's processed food oils that we eat, and the body is pushing through it, dude. The body is an amazing thing. It isn't what you eat, it's what you absorb. What weightlifter's wisdom. Hey, that's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. Just being low in one particular vitamin. Want good testosterone levels? Exercise, lift heavy weights, stay active, lower sugar intake, eliminate alcohol, drink 90 ounces of water, and sleep 8 hours. Yep, that's really it, man. That's a good summary right there. And one thing that people don't realize is how important sleep is. We're in this culture now of neglecting sleep is cool, right? Not only are we completely addicted to caffeine, which completely destroys a lot of vitamins and minerals, by the way. So if you're drinking caffeine, you're probably deficient in a lot of vitamins and minerals, unless you're taking active measures. But we have this culture of shaming sleep. Like, oh, I only get 4 hours of sleep a night. Yeah. 3 hours of sleep. Hey, you get 8 hours of sleep, dude? What are you doing with your life? I sleep when I'm dead. There's this culture of just completely taking a dump all over sleep. That is absolutely necessary for testosterone, muscle growth, mind health, neurogenesis, everything. Body and mind. You have to get a lot of sleep. I allocate 9 hours for myself every day. That was the best thing I think I've ever did in my entire life, is allocating 9 hours for sleep. Aaron says, my wife had pica, low iron. She ate ice obsessively. We got her on an iron pill, and her ice eating habits of 10 years was gone in 3 days. Oh my God, dude. People don't understand how nutritional deficiencies are linked to mental illnesses, behavioral problems, like ADHD, for example. A lot of these problems that people are, it's depression, anxiety, a lot of these things can be solved by not taking pills, pharmaceuticals, by the problem is it's become kind of a meme, because when someone says I have depression, I have anxiety, somebody will say, well, just diet and exercise, dude, diet and exercise. That's a real thing, but they don't take the steps to go get a nutritional test, get a blood test, get the actual vitamin levels. They don't track what they eat. They don't try to locate their deficiencies. And as a collective society, you see where that gets us. Over time, when 350 million people don't care about their health and wellness, you get a sick care system that crumbles under the slightest pressure from something like a pandemic. I mean, the hospitals all had to, had nothing near the capacity they needed to treat all these people who shouldn't have been there in the first place because they were fat, unhealthy. I'm going to be talking about health a lot on the new channel too, by the way. I love this conversation, and this is something that I've been doing a lot in my personal life, is focusing on health. Magnesium is the bomb, especially if you struggle with number 2. Magnesium is a huge one that people they're vastly underestimating. I dumped straight magnesium right into my mouth. Magnesium glycinate by the pound. No, not by the pound. Don't do that. Not medical advice. It's a joke. It's an exaggeration, but it's your responsibility to understand this exaggeration. Okay, guys, I think that's about all we got. We went down a lot of different avenues tonight. A lot of good stuff to talk about. The general gist of things is that though I won't be doing these live streams on a scheduled basis anymore, follow the Telegram chat in the link below in the description to get clued in to when the new YouTube channel comes out. Probably be early next week. We'll start pumping out videos about all these things, alt-centrist perspective on society, government, health, science, politics, all this stuff. You're going to get the alt-centrist perspective. We're going to widen the scope of what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be going more in-depth on these particular topics, having better production value. I mean, look at how good the live stream looks right now. Just imagine how good the pre-recorded videos are going to look, okay? We're not playing around anymore. And you guys can share all those great health tips in the Telegram chat with me too. So speaking of that, I'm going to go assemble my home gym now. I appreciate you guys being here for the streams. We'll catch you on the new YouTube channel. It's a new year, new channel. Am I bringing back the whiteboard? Maybe. I might bring back the whiteboard. Good recommendation. So, of course, you will find me on the Telegram chat if you're wondering where I am. Paul's got a stereo here, and then we'll close it out.
Before you sign off, I hope you play this. Promise us something, Jeremy. Just sorry. Don't pull a Jack Murphy or John Goldman. Don't do that. Don't do that to us.
I can guarantee you that there is nothing in my past significant enough to warrant anything near the scale of a John Goldman or Jack Murphy. But appreciate that. If there is, I'll have to go find it and dig it. I got to go delete some tweets, guys. I got to return some videotapes. We'll catch you next time on the Weekly Narrative. Thanks for joining me. Hope you guys have a great night. Have a great 2022. I'll see you in the Telegram and see you on the next channel. Bye now.